Well, Jeannine, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. I'm super excited to be back again.
My co-hostess with the mostest. Listen, I am so excited. We got some shit to talk about
Yes, we do.
today. Yeah, and I'm excited for the seekers to be. That's what I'm calling our listeners, the seekers.
I like it.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll
Yeah,
see what they
good.
say.
I do.
By the way, so if you're listening to this and you have questions about the action items that we did last week, we're going to talk about the homework. If you have questions about this, you can email us. We would love to hear from you. The self-help, actually, it's just self-help junkie podcast at gmail.com. So let's talk about, do you want to cover, listen, you were so brilliant in that video about the last homework that we did, right? It was the character traits versus
Yes,
setting resolutions. So that was our
yes,
topic last week. And you
yes.
came up with a brilliant way of sort of, well, maybe I'll just let you sort of recap it and then we can talk about the homework.
So basically, I spoke about rather than coming up with a resolution, that's a goal of some sort. That's like, a thing that we try to do year after year after year, approaching it as a character trait in general, and then seeing what underneath that would serve us the best, what underneath that resonates with us the most, and sort of lean in that direction versus a specific goal, especially if it's something that we've tried to do year after year after year and miss the mark, right? And so I
Everybody.
recommended like three traits, coming up with three character traits. Although I agree with you, what we were speaking about last night, that that's kind of a lot, and maybe it would be better to focus on
Yeah,
one.
I'll share about what went wrong for me.
Okay, three character traits. And then for some period of time, journaling at night or the morning, after and reviewing the day prior and saying, where was I the opposite of that trait
Right.
today? And so for me, mine were financially responsible, financially abundant.
Yeah.
So the opposite of that would have been financially irresponsible or a scarcity mindset. Like, where did I see
Mhm.
evidence of that? Organized, obviously opposite of disorganized,
Right.
and then proactive, and then procrastination.
Okay.
And so those were mine that I was working with. And they actually, for me, it ended up being pretty helpful. I did more generalized versions of it throughout the day because
Okay.
I think this is things I think about so much. But so the initial idea that we spoke about was, so where did I procrastinate today? How did it make me feel? What could I have done instead? And then just simply noticing that over a few weeks' time or whatever the time period is that you're writing about it. And then under the what could I have done differently, we start to see patterns around
Mm.
shaping ourselves in the direction of these character traits. And for me, I did a few things that I have been meaning to do for a very long time.
Really?
So my credit has been in the toilet since I was like 25.
Okay.
And I've never been able to right the ship on that, or haven't actually just taken the time. And when I've attempted to get even secured credit cards, secured, meaning you give them the money first and then you charge it, I
Yeah.
can't even get those. And I've been applying for years, like once every 8 months for a decade. I'll try to get one. And they send me a letter, and it's like, this social security number has not been used in any legitimate way, because it's a long story, but I had an alias with a fake social security number that I was getting arrested under for a long time. And
Mm.
so even my arrests aren't under my actual one, which
Yeah.
is kind of good, but not, because the bail bonds debt is attached to this other thing. But it looks like my social security number wasn't used since like 2008. And so there was always, I couldn't get any forward motion.
Right.
And while we were doing this exercise, I heard an advertisement for what sounded like kind of a shady one. And I thought, we're doing this exercise right now. Let me just try again. I know what's going to happen, but whatever. And so I looked up this one on Reddit, and in the Reddit thread, other people were talking about the Discover one and suggesting that it was more legitimate and very
Mm.
forgiving. And I applied and I got it. I got
Oh,
it. I
oh,
got the scholarship.
congratulations. Oh my God, that's huge.
I know. Finally, for the first time in a decade. So I haven't gotten it in the mail yet, but I can find.
And you
So
wouldn't have done that if you
no,
hadn't been
it was
doing this
because it was
exercise.
on my mind. I always
Holy
think about it,
shit.
but it was on my mind. And then also, I
But you were
have
taking
started,
action is my point. Oh,
yes, yeah, I
yeah.
took action. And then also, I it's very hard for me to ask for money, even that I'm owed. And so, like, my
Mm.
boss and I split green juice delivery monthly. And she owes me for the half of it. And I have not Venmoed her the request for months. And it's
Months.
also partially because we like are always buying each other things. You know what I mean? Like I was like, well,
Yeah.
it'll come out in the wash, but like not really because it's really expensive.
Okay.
And I finally Venmoed her. I sent her the Venmo request for the months.
Hmm.
And I will say though, one thing I could have done differently was we were already into January and
Hmm.
I brought her one jug and then she mentioned not wanting to do it anymore. And she said, after this month, I don't want to do it anymore. And then when I Venmoed her, I did not include January though. And I was like, I'll just take care of January, even though she had offered to finish it. Do you know what I mean? And so
Ah, yeah.
like that was a moment where I was
Oof.
like, so that's what I wrote down for that day. I could have done that differently, but I still asked for the Venmo.
Okay.
So for me, I actually, it was, and I would do all of those kind of together at once, disorganized, proactive. And so for me, it was almost like I wasn't just only noticing where I didn't do it. It's
Hmm.
like I knew I was going to be doing this exercise.
Hmm.
And so I was taking action on it during the day.
Yeah.
So it ended up being like a real, for those of you listening, Arlina and I are also 12-step recovery people.
Yeah.
And so we have something called a 10th step where you take a daily inventory and it's like what I could have done better today and
Yeah.
what I did do well. For me, it was like an actual 10th step where I was also writing like, what did I do though instead?
Yeah.
But I think that that was okay because just like in a 10 step where you don't want to just write the negative things, the way I've always done it is to also say
Yeah.
you did well. And so I would maybe add to this
Mm.
exercise in the future something I did well though as well. You know what I mean? So it's not just
Oh,
noticing the places I could have done something better. Did I do something better?
okay. Notice the positive.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm taking notes because I created a worksheet.
Yes,
I love a worksheet. I'm such a
I know
nerd.
you do, but I
I love
love it. I love it
worksheets,
because
spreadsheets, and it makes me feel organized.
see, I love them too, and I won't ever make them. So
Oh,
it
I'll
was
do it.
great.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to update the worksheet to highlight the positive because the truth of the matter is we need to know what to do. I
Right,
think it becomes very apparent pretty early on what not to do. And that's not what we need to know what to do. So
right,
I heard this idea recently of just run the experiment. And I didn't know, like, in certain circles, this idea of run the experiment, right?
right.
It's like you have
Just
a
see,
hypothesis, yeah, and just see what happens.
right.
And so it's very important to notice the positive because that's what we're going to do more of.
Well, and for me too, that kind of felt organically like the next step for me because if I was writing on a Monday, what could I have done differently today?
Hmm.
Ask for the Venmo. The
Hmm.
next day, I did it. Right?
Yeah.
Like, why just
Yeah.
keep writing about it for once it's in my head, and I knew we were doing this exercise for the purpose of growth.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
So it
And
sort of
that's the whole
created the
point.
action, the whole point. Yeah. And so for me, it helped actually create the action.
So for
So,
me, like the whole point of doing all this stuff is for two reasons, behavior change and to feel better,
right.
really.
Hmm.
And I like how you framed it in the very beginning instead of a goal, which is an outcome, we're saying, what are the actions? Like, who do I need to be? What would somebody that has already reached this goal, what would they do?
Right.
Like what
Well,
character traits that they have, what would they do?
and it's that idea of focusing on the process
Yeah.
rather than the outcome because we can focus on the process. I saw somebody actually on TikTok last night. I loved this. She said, because I often have social media following goals, right? And
Uh-huh.
she said, rather than focus on, I want 1 million followers, focus on, I'm going to post 3 times a day for a year because that we can control. We can actually
Oh my
do.
God, is that what we have to do?
That's what she said.
Me.
And I look,
God,
she's at
yes.
250,000.
Oh
For
my God,
me,
I'm
if we
exhausted
just did
already.
once a day for, a year, then which is actually probably something I'm going to at least try to do on TikTok's so much easier though. It doesn't
I
have to be
know.
integrated. And I know
Mm.
it's less of you do soap over there, right?
I do.
Mainly. Right.
Yeah.
So,
And that
but if
has
we,
really grown. It's like over 10,000 now.
right? And it can
Yeah.
be way more, it's not so curated on TikTok. but I
Right.
still get hung up on, which is why I think it's great what we're talking about today. I
Okay.
still get
Oh,
hung up
yes.
on what people are going to think, even on TikTok. And so I
Yeah.
won't post things if I look
A
old.
certain
I won't
way.
do it till I pop a filter on it or whatever. So I'm going to try to focus on that too,
Ooh,
probably based on
yeah.
what we talk about today. But I love that idea of let's focus on the process
Yeah.
versus the outcome. And I know that that's a cliched thing. Everybody just knows that. Everybody's always like, heard about that.
Well, maybe some people
Writing it down
haven't
now.
though. Like you and
Right.
I are
Yeah.
in 12-step circles where that is like,
True, true, true.
work the steps and steps will work you. That's
That's
trust the
true. That's
process,
true.
So I think maybe people that are not sort of in that world will really appreciate. But I think what is really significant about this process is that it's about identity shaping.
Yes.
Like we begin to say, I am an athlete, I'm a healthy eater, I am organized, I am, and I think and I'm always obsessed with self-esteem because it's esteem that you have with yourself. When you do something hard and you keep your word to yourself, that's what builds self-esteem. And I have such a deep belief that we only allow into our lives what we believe we deserve on a subconscious level. And so by keeping your word to yourself, even if it's like micro commitments, it's
Right.
better to make a goal so small that you know that you can keep it so that you build that self-esteem, because that absolutely will start to rewire your belief system, your brain and your belief system to this is who I am now.
Yes. I totally
And to
agree with
watch your words about how you speak about yourself.
And that was another part of this that I liked too, was I know that journaling or writing at night, doing something introspective, pen to paper,
Yeah.
is great for us as human beings, as people in recovery, as people not in recovery in general. And I haven't done it in a very long time. And this had me doing it again. So that
Nighttime
helps
is
me just simply
specific.
that.
Yeah, nighttime is specifically useful because whatever you go to sleep with, your subconscious mind kind of chews on it at night. Like I do my stuff in the morning, but I really think that that's a good idea to also do it at night. I need to change my nighttime routine because we just watch Game of Thrones before we go to sleep. It's
Listen,
like that is our bedtime story.
I'm such a huge,
I know you
and
are.
here we go again with another thing that we're similar. House of the Dragon. Can't wait. You watch that one, right?
Well, so I started watching some of the other ones and I was like, it's not the same.
I mean, okay, it's not, but I was such a Targaryen fan, and so
Yeah.
Skylar, that I got really into it. But
Yeah.
again, it's another 2 year wait. So hopefully
Okay.
summer House of the Dragon. But y'all should catch up
Okay.
before it gets
Okay, I'm gonna catch up on that. But I just want to share kind of my experience with the thing because I had some really interesting insights. So I created the worksheet and I was like, okay, what are the three character traits? And mine was around efficiency, being organized, and courageous, right? Because I find that there's all these things I would like to do. Like I would like to do marketing down sort of the traditional PR route. Like I really want to get away from social media. It's
Mhm.
killing me.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about today's topic is going to be about FOPO, fear of people's opinions. Worrying about what other people think. And this was based off this Rich Roll interview that we both saw with Dr. Michael Gervais, where he wrote this book about mastery. And he's like, the very first thing that we need to address is worrying about what other people think of us. And we're not saying we're not going to care. We do care, but not worrying about it. So we're going to talk about that today. But as I was writing this exercise, I was like, oh, I need to have courage. But when I was writing my exercise, my traits were efficient, disciplined, courageous, and the opposite of that was like wasteful, which kind of felt different than inefficient because wasteful almost was like more painful.
Yeah.
There's something about wasteful that just
There's a
that
pretty
I
negative
really did.
connotation to that.
Yeah, and I kind of
Like
wanted to use
spoiled,
something.
you're wasteful. You know what I mean? Oh, you did that on
Yeah.
purpose.
Yeah, I did it on
Oh,
purpose
okay.
because I thought it would give me more leverage over
Okay.
myself.
Okay.
But I'm starting to think that that was a mistake. It was a little shamey.
Yeah.
It was a little shamey. And then discipline, the opposite of that for me was like overwhelmed or stuck. And I actually came to the conclusion by doing this exercise, I came to the conclusion that and disciplined and in brackets inspired to take action, right?
Okay.
And as kind of how I was thinking of it, but the overwhelmed and stuck, I felt like I was in overwhelm and stuck mode. I'm writing a book. I wanted to do this PR marketing thing, which involves me pitching myself
Okay.
to, this is so perfect that we're going to be talking about FOPO, but it requires me pitching myself to other podcasts and online publications like Yoga Journal or Parenting Magazine or Forbes or, New York Times. Like I was going to shoot high.
Okay.
But I was feeling overwhelmed and stuck. And what I realized during the writing process is that my goals are too big.
Okay.
Like I need to break it
Okay.
down into, I was like, okay, I want to reach out to the New York Times and pitch them on a story idea about being alcohol free. And, this one of the little known facts about alcohol is it will raise your baseline of cortisol, the stress hormone, when you're not
Okay.
drinking.
Okay.
Right. And so we feel, it kind of creates that cycle of addiction because at the end of the day, you're like, oh, I deserve a treat. I want a glass of wine to relax. So you go into it thinking, I'm going to use this to help me relax. And then it
Okay.
kicks off this cascade of chemical reactions that actually ends up raising your level of cortisol when you're
Okay.
not drinking. So that when you're not drinking, you feel more stress. And then it kind of perpetuates this idea, oh, I need a glass of wine to relax, and it starts that
Right.
vicious
Totally.
cycle. So
Okay. Yeah.
that's like one of the mechanics behind addiction. That was a long thing to say, but so anyway, I thought that would be a great idea to pitch to like some journals, but then like I got overwhelmed because it felt like there was like a lot of things to do. It felt like a big goal. And so what I
Totally.
realized is I go, oh, I have this tool about chunking. Like you chunk things down to what is like the very next micro step.
Right. Okay.
So it was like, okay, well, just go to the New York Times website and find out and look for who do I pitch to.
Okay.
Okay, so I got that down.
Okay.
And then the next little micro step was, okay, write a pitch and then put it in like a word format and then play with it, sleep on it. And then, so it was like, and then develop it. So step by step, like the subject line, the three
Right.
talking points. And then, so I started chunking it down into little manageable bite-sized pieces. So I feel like maybe it's going to take me longer, but I will
Right.
be able to reach the goal of being disciplined. Like
But I
just
love that because that came about through this exercise,
it did.
being more efficient.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the other thing I realized when I was doing these three things is that I probably should have just focused on one character trait at a time.
I would I would agree with that as well. Even though I did mine super generally, it probably would have been more helpful to just do one at a time,
Yeah.
maybe one per week or something.
Yeah, like
But
rotate them.
I love this because it created action in both of us, which frankly
Yes.
I wasn't actually really expecting. I thought it would just give us a formula for action in the future, but when you think about it, it makes sense because I'm sure you know about this, but the reticular activation system, our RAS in our brain,
Yeah, yeah.
programmed for us to start looking for what we're looking for, right? Looking for what we're thinking about. If you want to buy a
Yeah.
Prius, you're suddenly going to see Priuses everywhere. I see
Isn't that
plugs everywhere.
funny?
Yeah. And so it
Yeah.
makes sense that when we had these three traits in mind, we
Yeah.
started looking for ways that we could actually work on them during the day. So even though it's a general thing, like I've wanted to be organized my whole life, I've wanted to be financially abundant my whole life. When I was actually writing about it, because I just recently learned this, the way you activate the reticular activation system is through questions. And so
Oh.
since we knew those questions were coming in the evening or
Yeah.
the morning, we were looking for ways to answer that question later
Yeah.
more efficiently. And so you and I didn't even know that was going to happen.
I
And
didn't
it,
even think about that. I learned about the RAS from Tony Robbins like a bazillion years ago.
me too.
And
Well, Ed
and it,
Milet, who I'm sure learned it from Tony Robbins. And now it's like my favorite thing to talk about.
yeah, they talk about it a lot in hypnosis too,
Right,
right? So, I practice hypnosis with my clients and
right.
it's all about reshaping the subconscious mind. But what people don't realize, so there's the conscious mind, like you and I are talking now, and then there is the subconscious mind. It's like where all our feelings reside and belief systems and stuff like that. And people make decisions emotionally and justify logically,
Okay,
right? But what stands between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind is this thing they call the critical factor. It's like a filter, and that's what the RAS is. It's like a
Okay.
filter. And so
Right.
you tell it, because there's like 6 million bits of information coming at us at all times, right? And so your brain needs to be able to filter out what's important. So we filter out, number one, it's things that are danger. That's why we have like a negativity bias. It's out of survival. Your brain is designed to help you survive, but it
Okay.
also is a negativity bias, right? You're looking for negative things. So what we're trying to do is be conscious and look for positive things, which we did in this exercise.
Yeah, which
And we
we
both
both
had,
ended up doing, which I love that we
we
both
had
ended up taking action.
amazing insights just in the 2 weeks that we
Mhm.
did this practice.
Yeah.
Right.
And I
So,
got
and
I got a secured credit card for the first time in 10 years.
amazing. That
Yeah.
is, dude, that's like a miracle.
I'm so happy. This really needed to happen. I'm 43 with like a 400 credit score.
How did it feel when you got the yes?
So unreal and almost unreal. Like, and so validating because what
Oh,
actually happened was I started to go through it and then I didn't know affirming maybe would be a better affirming of that I'm actually moving forward, because
yeah.
it hasn't felt like I've made any forward progress in this area for a very, very, very long
Wow.
time. And so actually, I applied and it looked like I was going to get it. And I needed to know my routing number and my banking number.
Account
I
number.
was
Yeah.
doing it on my phone and my computer was downstairs and I didn't want to go get it. And so I tried to find, I had Skylar look it up. I did it wrong and it kicked me out of the thing. And so I immediately went right back in. And that time it didn't get me to the screen where I put it in.
Oh, uh-huh.
It gave me the response I always see,
Oh.
which is Miss Coulter will be sending you a letter in a few days. And I thought, damn it. And I
We
said,
will be rejecting you in a few days.
because I told my husband, I was like, oh my gosh, I got it. And he said, that's amazing. And then I did it. And I said, oh no, I didn't. Of course I didn't. Like it was a mistake.
Oh,
And then the next morning I woke up and I had an email that said, finish your routing information. And I was like, oh, jeez. And so I opened the email, finished my routing information, and then I got it. So I actually had to spend a night thinking once again I had failed.
oh,
And then the next
wow.
morning I got to like relive getting it. So, I mean, it felt great. It felt like because I used to have, prior to my addiction to alcoholism, I had great credit in my early 20s. And so I know
Mm-hmm.
what it feels like to feel like you're a responsible adult. And I know what it feels like to not be a responsible adult.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was a great feeling.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Yeah, and
Thank you.
and I ask you about how it felt because a lot of the work that we do, especially like manifesting and stuff like that, it is to feel the feelings as if it's already happened. And
Right.
the easiest way to connect with those kinds of feelings is to remember a past win.
I love that. Okay.
Yeah, so we need to remember the past wins so that we can get
Right.
into that brain space, manifesting mode of what did it feel like? Because here's the funny thing is you went to bed with fear, false evidence appearing real,
Right.
right? You didn't, that wasn't the actual truth,
Right.
right? But it was sort of like this, reaffirming your negative belief, like this is
Right.
how it's always going to be, and this is how
Right.
it always
Totally.
was. And yeah. So that's amazing. That's a great story of how this actually
I
works.
know how this actually worked.
So let's talk a little bit about today's topic, which is FOPO, which I always hear FOMO, fear of missing out, but this FOPO, this was new to me. I was like, what the hell is that? Fear of other people's opinions or people's opinions. And so listen, in the age of social media, like I was telling you a story just before we hit record, and I was like, oh, maybe I should share the story. It's a little embarrassing. But and I typically do not do this, but I got into a little bit of a social media argument. Well, two of them. I was so spicy yesterday. Oh my God. So it's like so I'll just say it was a post about the Barbie movie, and somebody created a meme of like Greta didn't get the Oscar nod, Margot Robbie didn't get the Oscar nod, but Ryan Gosling did. And it was like the third point was this is literally the plot of Barbie. Right. And I was like, well, that was disappointing. And it was so interesting to see the men commenting about, yeah, that movie sucked and it didn't deserve an, and oh, but it won for screenplay. So those, Greta and Margot will actually get an Oscar if they win. And I was like, hello, that is not the point. So we were
Right,
having two different discussions. They were talking, they didn't like the movie. And I was saying, this is a commentary about the patriarchy society that
right.
we live in. And so, but it bugged me. Like I couldn't shake it. And I ended up deleting the post and everything, but I couldn't shake it. And I was like, wow, I am, after, you and I both listened to that episode, Dr. Michael Gervais talking about, worrying about other people's opinion. He has a book that's coming out. I can't wait to read it.
Me
Um,
too. I thought it was
but
already out and I went to go buy it on
I know,
Audible.
me
Like,
too.
get on the waiting list. And I was like, oh,
Yeah, I know. So bummed. I can't wait I'm going to listen to it. I'm not going to buy the book.
me too.
But I was like so twisted up inside about what I wanted to say to these other people. And I was like, why am I getting twisted up about this? And I was like, oh, I'm relying on external validation, right? I have been plagued by external validation my entire life.
Me too.
My entire life, and I know where that comes from. I understand that, in childhood, I was dependent on the adult in my life to provide my needs, my emotional needs first, but also my physical safety and well-being and all that. And if you're the care, if the adults in your life are challenging in any way or didn't provide you what you need, you had to comport yourself so that you had to please the adults.
You get what
You
you
had to
need.
betray yourself to please the adults so that you can then maybe get what you needed.
Right.
Right. And I experienced a lot of failure in that regard
Right.
growing up. And so I was conditioned to betray myself to get other people's opinions out of a need of survival. So this is like hardwired into my psyche.
Right.
So in sobriety and in this personal growth, I'm a seeker because of this very dynamic. This is like this is my
Yeah.
core wound. And
Hmm.
so I'm always looking for what is the thing that's going to fix me, it's really change my behavior, make me feel better. Right. But that there is such a catch 22 because what I really need to do is be internally validated.
Right.
Like, and that's where the self-esteem comes in, doing what I say I'm going to do, even if it's little micro commitments. So it was really interesting to hear and I'm sure you've experienced that too. Do you have stories you want to share about how that's affected you?
It's my primary, it's my primary issue as well. And it's interesting though, because what you were just saying about needing what you needed to survive from your caretakers and having to get their approval to get them. I actually think it is probably present for everyone because I had, as you know, I've discussed with you, I had a great upbringing. It's like my parents read all the child psychology books. I was loved. I was nurtured. I got approval regardless of win or failure. They wanted me to do well, but they would always say, like, you did so good at this. They were good at all the things, got everything I needed, and desperately need people's approval more than other people that I know anyway. And so
Oh,
I
why? Do
like,
you know why?
well, I think for me, and I don't know what about my psychology needed this, being popular and being in the cool group of women was always really, really important to me, even when I was in like fourth grade, third grade. I used to like read books about being popular, and I
Wow.
wanted to be in the cool girl group so bad for as long as I can remember. Actually, probably not for as long as I can remember. Once we moved from the Philippines to back to the States, I think I just felt really, really different and other than the other little girls, because there's a lot of stuff that you didn't learn in the Philippines. Like I didn't dress right. We didn't, it was just different. It's a third world country. And even though we lived on the military base, I think that I came from a place of, it was almost kind of cool in a way. We were valued more there as little kids for like, being smart or being in gymnastics. And then when you move back to America, it's really about like having the clear jellies that I didn't have, or the bright blue sparkly. And my parents they're not into materialistic stuff, and they did
Mm.
not spend money on us with clothes, and it was not their focus. I mean, we had what we needed, but
It's
so
painful to not blend in at that age.
right, right. And so for some reason, I don't know, just part of like my psychology and my own, I've actually not thought about that a whole lot, why I wanted desperately to be in the cool girl group, but I did. And it has been a pattern my entire life that I didn't even realize until my sponsor pointed out a few years ago. It has followed me from school to school to school. In rehab, I wanted to be in the cool girl group in rehab. And it's weird, I would be, but I was like the Lindsay Lohan character in Mean Girls, where
Hmm.
I was, but like not really. I was the fourth one and not always fully included through. And recently, I just lost two really good girlfriends again that were my great friends from my studio. They worked for me, and I thought we were like best friends, and they have completely dropped me like a bad habit. And it keeps me up at night wondering what I did wrong
Oh,
and
yeah.
how I lost them. And I'm always terrified it's going to happen again with
Oh,
women in particular.
I can see the sadness in your face.
Oh, I
It's
hate it.
sad. It's hard to lose people you love. Yeah.
Yeah, and it happens all the time. I mean, it happens to me a lot. Like every few years, I lose like a female best friend. They just never speak to me again. And what's crazy is that they're friends with me while I get ghosted by another one, and they see me be upset. Like these two, I got ghosted by a different friend 3 years ago, completely, and
Hmm.
they worked with these two were my friends, and we would
And they
talk about
saw it
it.
happen.
Yeah, and they were like, that's so fucked up. I can't believe she dropped you like that. She shouldn't have done that." Because I'm blaming myself, because like I'm not an idiot. The common denominator is me. It has to be something I'm doing, and I know that. I'm actually, what's interesting though is the one that I'm referencing, her name is Ivy. She recently called me up out of the blue, and we've been talking again. She was like my best friend, went to my wedding,
Wow.
worked for me at my studio, and then during COVID, she disappeared and
Mm.
wouldn't speak to me for 3 years. And I
Wow.
texted her along. She's in sobriety as well. She's sober as well. And I texted her along amends, and I was like, "I'm so sorry if you didn't feel that I gave you what you needed in a friendship. I've always valued you, maybe more than I showed you, and I'm sorry." Long step, didn't even answer.
Wow.
Never liked a single thing of mine on Instagram again. She didn't unfollow me, but never liked a single thing. I would DM her stuff. She's a big roller skater, and I sent her some pink checkered Vans roller skates, and I thought you would love these. It said seen, no answer,
Wow.
and no showed for work, never came back, and started teaching at an F45 instead. She also was an instructor at my studio and just never came back. And my
Wow.
friends, these two girls, were like, "Oh, I can't believe she did that because I'm so sad." And they're like, "Don't be sad. You're better off without her. She ghosted all of us. She no-showed to work." La, la, la. And I'm like, "You're right. You're right." They just did it like 6 months ago as my husband was using. So, anyways, it like plagues me. But
Yeah.
the one recently came back into my life, and I'm going to ask her. I don't want to scare her off, so I haven't yet. But after a few months, I'm going to say what happened, because this has actually just happened again, and I'd really like to know. So, anyways, I am. It's to the point where I don't even want to get close with women anymore. Like at the
Mm.
studio, I'm like, when they see
Yeah.
me as their instructor, they love me. If we start hanging out, something goes sideways, you know?
Yeah. They need you on a
So
pedestal or something.
I think that's part of it. I don't know what happened. So, anyways, I am plagued by it for completely different reasons that I don't actually fully understand. But what I loved about what he said, and I don't want to jump ahead of us too much, but it almost helped me release a little of my hurt with them, because I loved what he said about, he speaks about the people that you want at your round table, which are the people in your life that
It's a
you actually
perfect segue.
care about what they think.
Yeah.
He said this is the criteria for him, and I love this. They know your micro and macro traumas, and so they can understand why you respond in the ways that you do. They know who you are, and they know where you're headed. They have context in your life. And for me, because I have some ideas about what they got mad about, Skylar relapsed and disappeared. My husband, he went to
Hmm.
Mexico the day before one of their weddings, the day before.
Oh, uh-huh.
And so I canceled the day before. I didn't fly to Maine because my husband was missing in Tijuana.
Yeah. Seems
And they're really mad.
reasonable.
They're really mad. That's why they're mad,
Mm.
because I didn't go.
Okay. Yeah.
And in retrospect, he has relapsed before. If I had known he was going to keep going for a year and a half and burn our life to the ground, I would have gone. But I didn't know that was going to happen. And in the past, I've been able to stop him. If it's day
Yeah.
one, I stop him. my micro traumas are, my dad left. I don't
Mm,
want to lose another man, right? Like there are
mm,
all I'm in recovery myself, and someone
mhm.
saved my life when people told him not to. And so
Yeah.
like, and they know all this. We've been friends for 7 years. They know all that, right? And so to know all that, they worked for me for years. I've supported them. I taught them how to teach. To know all that and like abandon me anyways falls outside the criteria of that round table. Do you know what I mean? And so
Okay. Yeah.
part of me that when I heard him say that,
Yeah.
was actually able to say, like, you know what? Like that was wrong on their part. I would never have done that to one of you two, ever. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
anyways, I know this is kind of jumped ahead a little bit, but
No, this is perfect. A
also,
perfect segue.
okay, but I also, to answer your question, though I had all of my needs met by my caretakers, I had like literally
Uh,
perfect parents. Like I feel bad I'm
yeah.
not having kids because their best legacy would be for me to raise a kid like they did, And I was actually thinking yesterday I should write a book about all the things that they did and said that were so moving. But anyways,
Yeah.
um, but even though I had all those needs met, I still am plagued with those feelings. But
Yeah.
he also said that it's survival for anyone, because if you're pushed outside of a group, historically, from an evolutionary standpoint,
Thank you.
that
Yeah.
does mean death. And
It
so
does.
even if you aren't a former heroin addict who nobody wanted to help and you had all your needs met, or like you didn't have your needs met, most people probably are still plagued with this, maybe just to like greater or lesser degree, what other
Uh-huh.
people think.
100%. Yeah.
And when he said that, it did make me feel better, because it's weird that I'm like this. Part of why they probably stopped talking to me is because I get butthurt all the time if I'm not included in things.
Mm,
And so I've got to find a way to not like to be able to not bring that up, which is why I love this, that we're talking about this, because I also bring it up too much. And I did that with those two girls because they drink and I don't. And so they'd go to concerts and not invite me. Like, of course, I
yeah.
probably wouldn't have either, but I'd get really.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this all is definitely under the umbrella of something that I have got to also figure out and work through. Like I have to. I gotta let them go and not create a scenario in the future where people feel pressured to be my friend again, you know?
Yeah. Well, so I mean, I have a couple thoughts about it. I don't know if this is a good time to share it, but listen, I just came across this guy who he's got like 2 million followers on YouTube, but he has this video, and it's a sort of hypnosis on how to increase your self-worth. And he
Oh,
tells his story about how he had an abusive stepmom, former stepmom, because his dad finally divorced her, but she was so abusive between ages 7 and 14. And that's when he really was developing his identity,
right.
right? And so he developed this identity that he wasn't worthy of receiving love. And he had this interaction with this woman who was, his stepmom, that was really negative in a very specific way. And then he grows up and he gets this job at Nordstrom selling women's shoes, and he's working for a woman who is exactly like his stepmom.
Oh,
It's
wow.
like it's like he attracted, like, because he had these subconscious
Yeah.
beliefs
Yeah.
about who he was, he attracted the very same person.
Interesting.
And so that's this is a pattern that we do, is we have patterns where we keep attracting the same dynamic. But I
Right.
think it's because it's an opportunity. This is revealing a wounded place for you. So the work then becomes what Dr. Gervasi was talking about, which is the solution. It lies in purpose and internal validation. And I would argue that this, like I'm such a believer in, reframing our subconscious beliefs,
Right.
right, through hypnosis. And this, I'm going to share a link. I'll share it with you too, obviously, this
YouTube video.
link,
Yeah, I want to do
yeah,
it.
of the YouTube video. It's really good. It was really moving. So maybe that's one of the action items, is to
I would
listen
love
to
that.
that.
Let's do
Yeah.
it.
All right, so we'll include that. But his whole thing about, okay, so we're clear about the problem. It's like everybody, like for me, it was like a social media thing, like just getting into arguments with, which I never do. It's like, what is going on with, why am I so spicy? Why am I engaging in these? I did two in one day. I don't know. I was cuckoo yesterday. Um, but it's like stuff that eats at me, and I'm like, why am I so worried about other people's opinions? And so it comes back to this, the solution, the antidote is to really connect with your purpose
Mhm.
and internal validation. So I'm always coming back to this idea of, being present in the moment because I'm always, as a seeker, I'm always anxious because I'm forward thinking. I'm always in the future. I'm always in my head. And so, how do I get into my body? How do I get into the present moment? And how do I focus on the positive? Like when we were talking about taking the nightly inventory, we notice the patterns, but we also notice the positive, right? Because whatever you focus on expands.
Right.
And that's, the laws of attraction, what you think
Right.
about, you bring about. So let's start thinking about, for you in your case, maybe it's thinking about, focusing on the positive friendships that you have and in ways that you are
Or money.
included,
Yeah.
all the opposite, right? And and so purpose I thought was interesting because everyone's like, well, how do I figure out what my purpose is? And he had three very specific answers to that. One was that it's something that has meaning. And then the other was that it's bigger than me, and then it's future oriented. And as you and I were discussing this yesterday, we kind of both had a very similar purpose, which is to help other people, right? You and I are both very service oriented in the work that you do in the studio, and all the content that you create is very much around helping people, and that's what I do professionally as well, is
Right.
helping others. So I kind of feel like we had that um, sort of nailed down. But we were talking yesterday, this is a point that you brought up about purpose versus performance.
Right.
Do you want to expand on that a little bit? That was so good.
I mean, he talks about getting, that the solution here, the solve for this would be focusing on purpose versus performance, right? Like in terms of, it's sort of like the idea of focusing on the process
Mhm.
versus performance. So for us, it would be, or for me, it would be, did, how did I put out something that I know if a woman who was strung out on heroin and doesn't have a car and has 90 days and feels like a loser who's never going to get married, if she hears that and thinks, I'm okay, I can be these different things because she is, that would be my purpose versus how many downloads did it get though? That's
Right.
performance oriented. I am only performance oriented still. Like it's great to hear the things, but I'm totally performance oriented, as I think we all are as human beings, like we are all, even I know I keep talking, my friend Dave again, who has this huge podcast, he's like not happy with his downloads at all. I mean,
None of us are.
yeah, but his are, I mean, he's at a million a month. You know what I mean? And he'll say, you have to show me how to do TikTok. And I'm like, I've told you how to do TikTok. And he said, well, he put up one video and it went to 1.5 million views with Ethan Suplee, who's famous. And he's like, yeah, but I haven't seen any increase in listens. And I'm like,
Yeah,
it was
but
one day, but so, you know what I mean? But like even that person, and I'm sure, I mean, maybe not Joe Rogan, he's probably pretty happy
so
with it.
that's results focused. He's
Right.
results focused,
Yeah.
not did I do the action.
Yeah, are people's lives changing? And I look at all of his groups that are dedicated to supporting each other that he's not even in, that they all found each other through his show. And they'll be like, I got 2 days. And 14 people are like, yeah, he's not even in there. And I'm like, yeah, it's pretty purpose driven. But
He
we're
created a
all,
community, and yeah.
yes, I didn't mean to. I mean, he did, but so it's like, that would be
And this
purpose.
is Dave from Dopey. We should probably mention.
Yes, yeah, we could
Yeah.
say who it is. Yeah, I don't think he would care because I'm always telling him. He told me once, he was like, I think I'm on a high rise to the middle. I was like, I can't with you. You're on a high rise to the middle. You interviewed Nikki Six. Get out of here.
Get out of here.
Like,
Yeah.
anyways, but that's actually a good example because I think everybody feels that way. No matter where
Yeah.
you are, he's looking at Joe Rogan,
Right.
unless
Yeah.
you're Rogan, who's at the
Yeah.
top. But
And I'm
he's
sure he's got areas where he's like, God, I
I'm sure
wish I
he
could
has
just do
areas
this.
where he
Yeah.
doesn't feel, probably not in podcasting, but probably in other things. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? He's a
Yeah.
fairly, I know people have really varying opinions about him. I don't know if you listen to him at all. He's
I've always liked Joe because I'm a USC fan.
okay. He's a
So I've
very
always liked
enlightened
him.
guy though. So actually
I
he
think so
probably
too.
doesn't care about a lot of, you know what I mean? He's clearly done the work. You can hear in his voice
Yeah,
that
he
this
doesn't
guy
care.
has done the work. Yeah, like he is enlightened. So,
Yeah,
but so,
well, the whole Dr. Gervaisi thing was about it's not caring,
right.
it's not worrying.
Right. So how do I get to, so I guess what we're talking about is then how do I focus on, because I'm clear on what my purpose is. It's not only helping
Yeah.
people, it's, women, it's very niche, like women who lived outside and did horrible things, and
Well, we're serving a different audience now.
yeah, right, right. But like, but my purpose is, you know what I mean? Like
It's to
it's,
still help people. Yeah.
yeah, of course, yeah. And, women in general, like women specifically that feel their self-esteem has been dinged through whatever,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I do know that, but then how do we get to focusing on that? Because I do well at that, as do you, right? Like
Mhm.
people love my classes. A few weeks ago, like people will cry after my classes and tell me I've changed their life.
I
It
want to
does
come to your
work.
class.
It does work. But like I still
Yeah.
don't, I'm still thinking daily about these two girls that won't talk to
Yeah.
me. So
Yeah.
how do we bridge that gap? And I guess
Ah,
that's what
so
the
interesting.
action item
Yes.
we would
Yeah.
do.
The other action item was, so this is the writing exercise. This is the action item. So we're going to put up the YouTube video about how to improve your self-worth. And then we're going to answer the question, what is my purpose today? And it's based on, is it meaningful? Is it bigger than me? And is it future oriented? That's the second action item.
So the YouTube video, and what's the second one is daily writing
Yeah.
about my purpose.
Yeah, it's like, what is my purpose today? And you and I were talking about how your purpose might, the specifics about how you express your purpose might change on a day-to-day basis. Like there's days where I'm working with clients, and that is my purpose to serve those clients. And then on other days, my purpose is to do self-care, right? Because there's
Right.
that idea that you have to put the oxygen mask on yourself first. It's like you can't fill from an empty pitcher, right? It's like we have to fill up your cup first before you can share.
I'm gonna have to actually think of, because and I think this is good that I'm realizing this. I have
Hmm.
one purpose all the time, every day, which is what we spoke about, like, the podcast or my classes or whatever, helping other people in an effort to make money. It's just work oriented. That's it. And so for me, like
Yeah.
I never would have said self-care one day, ever. I never would
Yeah.
have said anything
Yeah.
other than this insane obsessive drive to be seen in my field.
Yeah. Workaholism is a thing for us
Right.
seekers. I feel
But
like that's a
like,
common trait.
yeah, but I'm gonna put my marriage as one. My marriage should be my purpose on
Yeah.
Sundays, where I get off the phone,
Yeah.
leave it at home. I can't do that, but get off the phone, you know, and like make it a different. So my task will also be, maybe I'll try to have three in the week.
Okay.
One of them,
Okay.
which will be 5 of the days probably, is going to be, work related and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe one day will be marriage,
Uh,
and then one day will be uh,
self-care.
maybe self-care. Yeah. Okay.
You look, did you see how quick your brain dumped that? Was like,
Yeah.
nope, not that.
You know why though? I feel like and I feel you could probably relate to this. I
Huh.
feel like I do self-care kind of like I'm always getting my lashes done. I had my Botox yesterday. I'm, like, is
Well,
that self-care? Because I do that all the time.
I think that is self-care, but what I'm talking about, and so, listen, before I got sober, I spent all my energy decorating the outside, but that is again, seeking external validation.
Right. Totally.
Right. To some extent, right?
Right.
Nowadays I do it for myself because I do it for myself so that I don't have to think about it.
Right.
I don't have to be self-conscious about it.
Right.
Right. So, but that's not what fills my heart, right?
Right.
It's like meditation, prayer, reading something in some sort of inspirational journal, like daily reflection type of thing. So I'm talking, when I say self-care, I mean the internal
Right.
nurturing of my
Okay.
soul.
And like it's crazy, I didn't even know that. Obviously, that's what self-care means. But I'm thinking lashes, which is not what self-care means. Of course, which I know. But like, so also for me, I need to go to the doctor. I never go to the doctor. I never go to the dentist. So for me, it will be
Okay.
that also. So I am going to make one of mine self-care, but I'm
Okay.
going to actually act on and internalize what you just said. It means like I need to call my
Spiritual.
insurance right now and switch my medical group because I need all these referrals. I need to do that. And I don't do it every day, but I will go get my lashes. I got Botox yesterday. I need to switch my
You look
insurance.
fabulous.
Thanks. So for me, I'll I'm going to do self-care and make it what you just said, which is what it actually is, which is
Well, I mean, it's both, right? But I'm talking internal self-care. We need to feel it's like an emotional, spiritual self-care.
totally, yes,
Yeah. And I was just on that Tony Robbins thing yesterday, and he was talking about energy management, really.
yes,
Right? Because,
I like that.
we do connect at the heart level. Like I can say some things, like I might stumble on my words and stuff, but when I'm speaking from my heart, that's what translates. That's what crosses all boundaries. Like nobody cares that I stumbled over my words if I'm speaking from my heart, right? Like
What
people feel that.
what comes from the heart enters the heart.
Yeah, love that.
I
I
say
never
that
heard
at a
that.
BBA meeting once. There's this woman that runs BBA in San Diego, and she's just
Big
like
Book Awakening.
this
I'm
wild.
not a fan.
Oh, okay. I don't know anything about it. I just went to a couple of meetings, and she's this way out there, amazing lady. Name's Tyla. And
You met Tyla?
yeah,
Oh
yeah,
my gosh. I've
amazing.
listened to, okay, so the side note, I
She's who
did go,
said what comes from the heart enters the heart. I went to
okay.
her.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not a huge fan of the process, but I did hear her speaking and
Okay.
listen, I'm a seeker, so I love good teachers.
Sure.
I'm
Yes.
obsessed with good teachers.
Yeah.
That's why I read all the
She is that.
books and I do all the workshops because I love me a good teacher.
Yeah, me too. And she is that.
Obs-
She's who said what comes from the heart.
Okay.
Because we were at like some retreat and she was there and she was talking and she's very like she had a crazy life. She was like in fashion in LA for a long time and she did like not me. So I did like gutter junkie crime, right? She did like high-end crime. Like you would make a movie about her. She's like Narcos, you know, and she's like Pablo
Right.
Escobar of the fashion district in LA. Cool stuff, cool stuff. And
Okay.
she's got this crazy story and she's very irreverent and she's just
She's
like
funny. She's a
talking.
powerful speaker. She speaks from the heart.
And afterwards somebody said, why do I've never, it was so sweet. It was like this 18-year-old kid and he was like, I just can't get it. But when I listen to you, I think I can, but you're like 80 and
Is
nothing like
she?
me. She's older. She's not
Oh,
actually 80. He thought she was 80. She's
oh,
70. She's in her 70s. And he's
okay.
like, but you're like 80 and I can hear you more than my own sponsor, but why that
Yeah,
should be the case. And she was like, because what comes from the heart enters the heart. That's why you heard me. And I was like, "Ooh, I love that."
that is so good.
Yeah,
I love that. All right, sorry, I'm like a
yeah.
squirrel today, totally. Squirrel. Okay, so I feel like, do we have our three things? We
So
have the YouTube.
YouTube, daily writing
Oh,
about
and then the
consistent.
third thing is maybe to consider who is in your round table. And that really just speaks to a support system.
Yeah, okay,
And I feel like I already have I know who my people are. I
okay,
have a very small circle.
okay.
Um,
Who
but
is
I
it?
know,
I asked, not necessarily names, but who they are in your world.
well, so it's so fun. Well, I guess it's not really that small of a circle, because I come from, the San Jose and I was, 30 years in that community. So I know a lot of people, but there are a handful of people that I know that I could call. So there's people that I reach out to that are work peers,
Okay,
right? And so that are podcasters, that are coaches, and so that are into marketing stuff. Like you're a podcaster, so you and I connect on that level as well. So, there's stuff I could only bring to you because nobody else understands like what it's like
right,
to be in the podcast world.
right.
Um, but I have people that I can reach out to when I'm worried about my kids, like other moms,
Sure.
right? I'm so lucky in the sense that in relationship, like my husband and I are solid.
Yeah,
Like I am so lucky. He's really just the perfect husband. It's not me. He's like super playful so that when I'm all cuckoo, he doesn't take anything personally.
you know what I loved too that he said yesterday, and you may feel this way as well.
Mm,
Something that he said about the round table that I thought was so cool. Gervais was saying
mhm,
that often you hear a standard, the criteria for someone that would be a real valuable support source for you.
mhm.
What have they done as well? What do they do? And he said, I'm less interested in that and more interested in, who have you been for me? Have you spent time with me under tension? build
Mm,
time with me under tension. And that's when
mhm,
he said, you understand my micro and macro traumas. You know who I am and where I want to go. You know the context of my life and you
mm.
support me. And I actually really love that because Skylar, my husband, doesn't do anything in public spaces at all. And I don't think your husband does either, right?
No,
Skylar's on
he's
social
not
media.
even on social media.
God. Yeah, mine isn't either. He doesn't even have Facebook. If he wants to do
Neither
Facebook,
does
he
Bob.
goes to safari.com and then does facebook.com, and he doesn't even remember his passwords from years ago. He hasn't posted anything. I tag him in our marriage stuff
That's
and
so
it's up,
funny.
but he hasn't checked in years. No social media, which I love. But like at times I've thought, especially recently, I think this year because he was struggling, I've thought, and I have a couple of male friends in the podcast space. And when
Uh-huh.
I've been mad at him before, I've been like, well, maybe I need a podcaster guy. You know, he doesn't even
Yeah.
know what he's doing. But like, he supports me so much more than one of
Hmm.
my podcaster guy friends, who's actually really critical of a lot of what I do. Skylar thinks everything I do is great. And so when I heard Dr. Gervais say that, I was like, no, that's me too. Skylar doesn't
Yeah.
get to know what an Instagram story is because he doesn't. I'll try to explain to him. I'm like, I'm gonna post this, and he's like, no, don't. And I'm like, no, it's in story. You don't see it all the time. And he's like, what
Yeah.
do you mean? And I'm like, forget it. It doesn't matter. He
It
doesn't
doesn't
even.
matter. Yeah.
But like, does he support like me? And is he my
Yeah.
biggest fan, of which he is? And so I also really liked when he threw that in there too.
Yeah.
Sometimes in the past, I've gotten caught in that trap that Skylar doesn't also do like public things, but he would
Yeah.
definitely be like my biggest support system, you
Yeah.
know? So I was wondering if
Yeah.
that was the case for you with your husband as well, which I suspected it was, and it is. He's not like a
Yeah.
media guy.
Listen, he's like he hates social media. He doesn't even he deleted his Facebook account, and I think the most he'll do is he'll watch YouTube mostly for sports or podcasts or something
That's
like
all he
that.
does. Yeah.
But
Skylar actually doesn't even listen to my show. Does your husband listen to your show?
no, he doesn't. He was on it once. Actually, he
Okay.
was on it twice. Somebody interviewed us as a
Okay.
couple, which I thought
Okay.
was fun.
Yeah.
And then I invited him to be a guest to tell his story and talk about
Okay.
how we resolved. Because if we talk about our relationship and how we've made it this long, and still
Yeah.
he's like my favorite person. And
Yeah.
after 29 years, because we work our resentment is like a wedge in a relationship. I feel like resentment is the thing that drives people apart.
Yeah.
And we just had a process through the 4 step where I go through and just do self-examination on my part and get clear about what I did wrong and kind of bring that to him with like sort of an empathetic heart, like, oh, I could see how my behavior must have made you feel. Meanwhile, he's doing the same thing,
Okay.
going through the same. He has a round table. And
Right.
so he can take his stuff to them and they help him sort his stuff out so that he's coming to me in the same way.
Right.
And when
Yeah.
we're both sort of like owning our stuff and not pointing fingers and taking personal responsibility, that breeds closeness.
Totally.
And
Okay.
he's really good about words of affirmation and stuff like that. And so I feel like that's kind of why we've made it this far. Plus, he's the funniest fucking person I've ever met in
Is
my
he?
entire life.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, at night we have what I call sleepover. Like when you were a kid and you go to
Yeah.
sleep over and you just can't go to sleep because people keep talking. It's like, okay, now we have to go to
Oh,
sleep. Yeah, he's funny like that.
is
And
he the
so
cool guy like my dad was at parties, or is he funny
totally.
to you? Oh, he is the cool guy at parties too.
Yeah, Bob is funny because everybody wants to be his best friend, but he's kind of
Okay.
antisocial.
Okay.
So
Okay.
over the 30 years, like, and he attracts really strong personality, like big personalities, or really because he has no agenda. He is just for you. Like if I take something to him and say, my girlfriend hurt my feelings, and this is why, he'll be like, do you want me to hate her? Which is hilarious
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
of
Right.
course no.
Right.
But it's funny that he would even say that. Like
Yeah.
he's so down for me. Like it
Oh,
doesn't,
that's
right or
so
wrong, he's
cool.
on my side.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Okay, so the people listening, Jeannine and I want to hear from you. We want to hear what challenges you're having. How can we help you? We are seekers. We are a community of seekers. So we will, if you don't, if you're like Jeannine and I struggle with money. So we're going to call on our community and say, if you have figured it out, we want to know how you do it. And
Yes.
so maybe we
Absolutely.
should invite your friend to talk about that. But where I have answers in relationships and personal development and changing beliefs. And Jeannine has all kinds of information, fitness, health, all kinds of stuff. So we're available. So we want to hear from you, and we'll set up the Patreon so that we can have bi-weekly meetings. So the episode will air and then the following week we'll have a meeting. Maybe we can air the meetings. I don't know how people feel about that. We'll see.
Right. Okay.
And yeah, we'll work on our 3 action items. So I will list them in the show notes on the Self-Help Junkie podcast.com website. And yeah, so our 3 action items, I'll send the YouTube video, your writing exercises, what is your purpose today? And it can be in a variety of categories. And then who is in your roundtable, build up your support system.
I
How's
love
that
that.
sound?
I love it. Great.
All right, we got it. Send us your challenges where you get stuck. We'll respond to that and share it with the group so that everybody can benefit from these questions and answers.
Yeah. This is awesome. Yeah.
Well,
Reach out
thank
to
you
us.
so much. That was
Thank
so
you.
fun. Love your stories. Love you. I hope you have a great day.
Thank you. Love your friend.
Thanks.